Hi, evening everybody. So today we're going to be going over a few things about the coronavirus. I just wanted to jump on to try and give some information, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, or anything maybe I didn't get a chance to go over, or maybe it's something else that you want to know about. And what I'll do is I'll do my best to make another video later this week to really go through some of those questions, to answer them, and do some research even if needed to find out what exactly is going on so we can all have the best available information. Now, of course, we're going to start first with just going through what the coronavirus is, then going through some things that you should and shouldn't be doing, and then of course some things that you can do to try and make sure that you're staying as safe as possible. So main thing first to really talk about is what is coronavirus. So a coronavirus really is a particular type of virus. It's named this way because it looks like a crown, and corona is Spanish for crown, and it's not something particularly new. Really, we've had different types of coronavirus. That's one of the reasons why it has all these other names like novel coronavirus and Covid-19, because these are more of the actual scientific names of what this is. In terms of coronaviruses, we've known about different types being present for a number of years. They're in our different types of communities. It's not just something we'd see in Asia, but we see in different parts of the world as well, where we have found them naturally occurring. And generally coronaviruses, they will spread through transmission between us and other animals. So it's when there's some sort of interaction where something mixes together, a new type of cell or virus gets formed, and a coronavirus is one of those types of viruses. And to be honest, this is something that we've seen a lot more in the past. So we've seen this such as say with SARS, with MERS, but in terms of other types of viruses with similar transmissions, also things like say H1N1, foot and mouth, all of these times are where in some ways it's hard to predict what nature will do. And we start to have these interactions between human cells and human viruses, and also between animal cells and animal viruses. Now, according to the World Health Organization, there is no proof that there is anything based to do with bats to do with this. They're suggesting that there may be something to do with civet cats, but again, it's speculation at this point. So it's not fair to start saying that it's definitely something or other unless we really have all of the facts of exactly what is going on. So I've got some notes today because there's a lot I really want to go over to make sure that we get everything. So in terms of how things spread, the spread is usually started by droplets. And these droplets can come from, say, our skin, and especially coming from our mouth, say, coming from spit and saliva. And what these will do is they can then be airborne, and then they can either spread, say, if we touch something, maybe the spit comes out of our mouth and it goes onto, say, a particular surface, maybe someone touches it, or even if they're very, very small particles, they may be in the air and they can affect people. Now, they're not necessarily going to be floating through the air that we have no chance. Viruses, technically, when you think about it, viruses are not living things. Viruses are dead cells, and they need a host to survive. What we have learned so far, at least according to scientific speculation, is that the novel coronavirus is only going to last outside of a person for maybe 3 or so days. So it does mean that, say, even if it does come out of somebody, then it will only live somewhere for up to around 3 days, and at that point, usually it may start to degrade and may not be active at that point. That's one of the big reasons why we have all of this social distancing. It's one of the reasons why people are being quarantined, because it's to stop the to flatten the curve, essentially, as we call it. So the idea is, instead of having a big spike of everyone having this at one time, it's to flatten the curve, so we reduce the amount of people, number one, getting it, but also number two, that we don't have a lot of people getting it at one time. One way to think of this is, say, if it, as an example, say this was a virus that 100 people are going to get. It's much better for the healthcare services for it to be 10 people each week rather than to be 100 people all at once, which creates a lot more problems and a lot more panic. And all those extra people could also mean, of course, in this non-hypothetical but in a real world scenario, that more people can then get infected and can get sick in a much shorter time frame, which unfortunately is what we've been seeing in certain parts of the world, such as with Italy. So it is a very good reason why they are doing quarantining here in Singapore and of course a lot of other countries. In terms of, like I was saying, about how it spreads, so it will spread on particular viruses, on particular surfaces. That's why it's very important at the moment to keep areas clean and to make sure that you're being careful when doing things like shaking hands, touching surfaces, even holding open doorknobs. To be honest, I remember when I was much younger, I was in the States and I saw this advert on a bus, and it was talking about how people should sneeze into their elbow. This was around 2007, 2008. And it's something for me has stuck for a very long time, but it really is the kind of advice, these little things that we can do, which now, and of course now we know into the future, to prevent the spread of these kind of problems and these kind of conditions. So again, if you're opening doors, try to be careful. And then the next thing we should do is, we should talk really about how this acts in the body and what it does. After we do that, then I'll talk more about some of the things we should and shouldn't be doing. So in terms of how it acts in the body, what it will do is, especially if it's being breathed in, it will start to claw onto particular types of cells. If you think of it, it's kind of like it, say, has a hook. It's like it's got a little hook on the outside of this virus and it's looking for other things that it can try to hook on to. So one of the most common ways that it will affect us is it will go, say, down the throat, and it will go towards the back near the lungs, and it will hook onto some of those cells there. When it hooks onto some of those cells, that's where it's going to start potentially starting to infect them. When an infection happens with a virus, what essentially it does, it goes inside of it, it's going to be taking over its DNA, producing new RNA, and it's going to be kind of making it like a host cell. If you think of it kind of like you see on these TV shows, again, on a very minute level, it's kind of like these TV shows with viruses that, it's going to sound crazy to say this, make zombies. And that's essentially what viruses do to cells. They will get into those cells, they make them kind of like these zombie cells where they take control and allow them to do the bidding so that they can continue to spread and to spread. And it's the same thing that's happening with the virus. Primarily it's happening to a lot of people at the back of the throat. That's one of the reasons why healthcare officials are really talking about people who are having coughs, sore throats or sneezes as being some of the main factors, because that's the main place it can hit. When it does go down there, what it will do then is it may travel further down into the lungs, also traveling more towards the small bronchioles and even potentially towards the alveoli. And when it's in these areas, it can start to cause inflammation, again causing things like coughing, causing buildup of fluid, and also starting to have more of an infection in this area. This is why we're having these primary symptoms for a lot of people. When we have inflammation, we also start to have a lot more of a buildup of the immune system, and the immune system then is going to start to raise the temperature. And the reason it's raising the temperature is the body is actually trying its best to try and kill this virus. It's doing everything it can. It's like turning on an oven to try and hot it out and get it out of the body. That's one reason why very recently, within the last couple of days, a lot of healthcare services around the world have suggested that taking ibuprofen or other anti-inflammatories may not be useful. And to be honest, this is actually something that a lot of people in the medical societies have known for a very long time. Anti-inflammatories may be very helpful for some types of symptoms, but long term they can actually be detrimental in certain conditions. And this is one of those conditions where it may not be best. So we would say, listen to the doctor's advice in this case, try to avoid anti-inflammatories, because by reducing the inflammation and lowering the body's temperature, you're not killing enough of the virus. So we need to really restrict those at the moment, especially for people who suspect that they may have contracted the virus. As well as affecting us in the lungs, it can also start to affect other areas. So either via, say, the lungs, the mouth, with the nose, the eyes, or other areas, it can get into the blood. But it can also get into the blood by other forms, such as if you, say, have a cut, or if you maybe going for surgery. That's why one of the reasons around the world, a lot of hospitals are now restricting the amount of surgeries they're having. They're doing, of course, emergency services, and they're still trying to make sure they're keeping as many people alive as possible. But if anything is what we call elective, or something where someone can last for a longer amount of time, almost everyone in the world is agreeing that really we should start to slow those and stop those so we can prioritize, again, the people who are more in an emergency state and to prevent the spread of this getting any further, and again, to try and flatten everything in terms of the results. So when it does get into the body and does get into the blood, it can start to have an effect on other parts of the body. These other parts of the body would include, say, the organs, such as going to your liver, going to affect the heart, even going to affect the stomach. When it starts to get in these areas, again, it's going to irritate, it's going to take over some of those cells, and it's going to cause inflammation. And over time, this can start to mean that your immune system is working a lot harder. Your immune system is kind of like an internal defense. It's something that's working for you at all points, trying to keep you healthy and trying to fight away anything that's against you, or trying to take over from you. And the truth is, at all points in your life, you probably have, again, the estimates vary, somewhere between 50 to 70% of all known bacteria and viruses living within you to some extent. However, the problem is, for the viruses, you have an immune system, and the immune system is going to be fighting and preventing an infection actively happening in the body. However, when we actually have a problem, this is because all the immune systems are being overrun. It's either for one of two reasons. One, that they're weakened, say because there's already too much work they're doing, or maybe there's some sort of other condition going on, or maybe not getting enough adequate nutrition, or some other things that we'll talk about later in this particular live. Or it's because there's a buildup of those viruses, and they're then overtaking the amount the immune system can defend. And especially, say, if this virus gets into the body and it starts to affect different parts, it starts to affect different organ systems, affecting the lungs, affecting the heart, affecting the liver, it means the immune system starts to work overtime and it can't do everything. And that's where we start to get these potential malfunctions in organ function, and we also can start to see even the organs deteriorating in their function. This is where some people, unfortunately, have had a much bigger effect on their health, beyond, say, some coughing and some sneezing, and of course these cases of unfortunate fatalities. So this is why it's very important to be mindful of exactly what's going on with the virus itself. Now, one of the reasons why this is something that's been taken more into account by a lot of people is that even though technically it does not spread as much as influenza, the fatality and mortality of this is much, much higher compared. I can't remember the exact statistic, but it was 0.0, I think 00 something for influenza in the terms of mortality. For this particular virus, depending where you are, it could be 2 to up to 10% based on what we're seeing, unfortunately, in Italy. Of course, this does depend on lifestyle factors, it depends on things like your age, but this is a much, much higher rate of mortality. Again, one of the good things and one of the advantages that humans have for this is that it doesn't spread as easily as something like influenza, which would spread much more easily through the air, something that would be near on impossible to prevent spreading around at a fast rate. The good thing is because we do have other things in place and in measure, like say quarantining, like social distancing, it should help to slow down this progression of the virus. In terms of the diagnosis, at the moment, the only way to do this would be by laboratory testing. At the moment, in terms of treatment, unfortunately, there is no treatment. There's a lot of viruses like this where we don't have any active treatment. It's really just giving the person's body enough chance, say with fluids, with adequate nutrition, and of course, by helping to use antivirals and other similar but not completely treatment style medications to keep the person alive when the things do get more dire. At the moment, there is no direct treatment. There are some things that are in the works as far as I've read, and there's also vaccines that are being developed at the moment in a number of countries around the world. Now, in terms of what we can do to prevent it, that's one of the big things, of course, everyone's going to be thinking about, and to be honest, a lot of it has probably been disseminated a lot to you by different sources, whether it's from here in Singapore, say from the Ministry of Health, whether you're in America in the CDC, or even just from general news media. I would say as much as the media sometimes can be a little bit overly alertist, it is giving good advice to a lot of people. So number one, of course, washing your hands. As we talked about, this is something that can spread by touching surfaces, especially if you touch those surfaces and you have your hands anywhere near your mouth, your nose, or your eyes. These are your most susceptible areas. Your skin is waterproof. If you have a cut in it, that's going to break down that barrier, but otherwise, nothing's going to get through here. The problem is that if you start to ingest something, it can go down to the throat and get to the lungs, like we were talking about, or if it's breathed in, again, it's going to go to that same passageway because the nose will connect down to the throat as well. And the other area that's really important to be careful with is your eyes. So again, number one would be washing your hands. Number two, keeping your hands away from your face, especially your eyes. Your eyes have a permeable barrier that's much more susceptible to viruses or bacteria getting in. This is not just for this virus, this is for all influenza. If you see people around you that are sneezing excessively and they have colds, do your best not to touch your eyes. Touching your eyes is one of the easiest ways for anything to get through to the body. It's one of these kind of catch-22s that we need to have this sensitivity for our eyes to work properly, but at the same time, it does leave us a little bit vulnerable when it comes to something like this where it's viruses or bacteria. Number thing would be staying at home if you are sick. Now, I understand it's very tempting to get sick and then think, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my doctor. However, if you go to a doctor's visit, every time you go to a doctor, at least any time I've ever been to a GP surgery, you're not the only person there. There's staff, there's other people who are sick around you or potentially sick around you. So if you go out there, especially before the symptoms are getting much more severe, especially if it's in a point where your body can actually deal with the symptoms itself, you may infect other people. And it's not just the people in that particular GP practice. If you're on the way to the doctors, maybe you have to take a bus, maybe you take a train. Even if you take a Grab or you're taking a taxi, you are still potentially affecting other people. So I would really ask people to try and be as mindful of others as they can and to not go straight into effectively going to a doctor's. I would suggest instead starting smaller, staying at home, informing your doctor, either by phone or by email or another form, but not going in straight away and listening to the advice they give, which I would imagine would be the same of staying at home initially and giving yourself that quarantining period, which at the moment in Singapore is currently 14 days. Another thing you can do is sneezing into your elbow. And again, like I said before, this is something I was lucky enough I saw 10 years ago, but I would recommend this from now on. As far as this goes, even when the world does our best to recuperate from this, please sneeze into your elbow, please sneeze into the top of your arm, not into your hands, anywhere which is going to be easy to touch, something you're going to be forgetting about and then potentially spreading something around that could be affecting other people which may be more vulnerable around you. And another one that you can do, it's something that we can all do to protect ourselves, is to clean and disinfect. So number 5 is cleaning and disinfecting any surfaces, and these will be, again, more prone areas such as doorknobs, such as cleaning surfaces, such as your phone, anything which you're going to have regular contact with or other people would have regular contact with, please keep these areas clean and disinfected. Now, these are the main things we can do in terms of our hygiene. What I want to go through now are a few things that you can do to try and help to improve your immune system. Now, when I say improve, I don't want to use the idea of boost. I don't agree with the word boosting your immune system. That's the equivalent of your car not working well, sending it to the mechanic and then boosting your car. They don't boost your car, they improve the function of the car and restore it back to how it was before. And this is the same for your nerve system and also for your immune system. All you can do is restore it to its best function. And to do this, of course, you need to give it the best ingredients possible. So the ingredients that we're going to be talking about today will be, number one, of course, the real ingredients of nutrition. So eating a good diet, eating healthy food, having foods that are high in anti-inflammatories, having foods that are generally higher in vitamins, that are going to be lower in sugar, higher in proteins and even healthy fats actually, would be very, very good for you at this point, especially the healthy fats, because a lot of the immune cells are made up of these healthy fats. So as an example, I'm going to be reading through here because there are quite a number of things, of course, people can reading through. So trying to avoid any processed foods or sugars, and unsaturated fats are quite good for you. Again, they make up a large part of the immune system. Even to some extent, having saturated fats, especially healthier forms, maybe such as grass-fed animals, these are the ones which will be healthier for you. Also trying to make sure, of course, you're getting, say, enough fiber. Organic foods, fruits, vegetables, and shellfish are all shown to improve the immune system, as are some herbs and spices such as garlic, such as turmeric and ginger. Again, trying to avoid any sugars, fast foods, or processed foods will be very, very helpful for you right now. The next thing I want to talk about, of course, is some of the things we should be avoiding. So when possible, try to avoid cigarettes, any drugs, especially if you're not supposed to be taking them, and also avoiding any alcohol. All of these things are going to suppress the immune system and slow down the immune system, just as much as I was talking about with ibuprofen and some anti-inflammatories as well. So having too much of these will start to again have a detriment on the health, which means your body and your immune system are already working harder to deal with those problems rather than trying to also deal with another problem such as the virus. So the next thing we're going to talk about, like things you can do more actively, is sleep. So as simple as it sounds, getting a good night's sleep, getting good quality sleep is something that will allow your immune system to be rejuvenated and to work at its best. The immune system, again, it's something that's not going to be unlimited. It's not perfect. It's something that needs as much energy as it can, and it needs sometimes a bit of help from you. And one of the best ways you can do that is a healthy night's sleep and making sure you're getting adequate sleep as well. So again, if you have any issues with sleep, I would suggest talking either with your physician or maybe trying other practices such as exercising, meditation, even trying other type of therapies such as Seifu. And then for the third thing I want to be talking about is staying active and getting outside. So when I say about getting active, I mean trying to exercise, because when you exercise, it's going to properly regulate the hormones in the body, and it's also going to make sure the body is working as best as possible. Especially if you're going to be stuck inside all day, potentially working from home, you might be taking down postures which are not as healthy for you. You might also be not getting enough sunlight. Now, sunlight is one of the big things because vitamin D, actually I was reading some studies on this today, I think we have it on our Instagram page. Vitamin D is one of the main proponents and one of the main parts of our immune system. So you have to have a lot of vitamin D to make sure things are working well. And one of the easiest ways to get this, I mean, you can get it from a lot of foods such as fish and from types of dairy, but the easy way to get it is to be outside. The easiest ways to get it is to be in direct contact with some sunlight, and that's where your body is going to start producing vitamin D naturally. One of the things as well, if you look at the research, will show that this is especially a problem for people as they get older. So when you're hitting, say, over 40 to 50 years old, getting beyond that, it's going to be much harder for your body to produce as much vitamin D. So at this point, either making sure, again, you're getting outside more, or even considering taking supplementary vitamin D will be very helpful to make sure your immune system can work as best as possible. And the last thing I want to talk about is avoiding stress, which is probably the almost silliest and hardest thing to do right now because there is so much stress going on. People are concerned, people are worried, people are seeing panic everywhere, and unfortunately seeing a lot of people being affected around the world because of this. However, I would say trying to do your best, whatever technique or whichever kind of way works best for you, trying to avoid any stress or trying to deal with any stress. Stress is a very real component of physical problems and physical ailments of the body. One of the easiest way I'd always think of this is if you have a physical stress, it's starting to work your brain in such ways that your brain can't do some of the other things it needs to do in the background. In terms of the physiology, we're going to go over it in some videos in the future, but the physiology is really where we start to have a change in how your brain function is working, which affects how your endocrine function is working, which affects how your muscles and your organs are working. And And this is all starting from stress. So trying to do your best to, again, either avoid or to deal properly with stress will be very helpful to try and make sure that you're not going to be as ill as possible. One of the things that we do see with stress very, very commonly throughout the research is immunosuppression. So it's your immune system not working well because your body is always in this fight or flight mode, which essentially means you're either going to run from something or you're preparing to fight something in front of you. And in both of those states, you need to have big, strong muscles, but you're not going to be having as strong as an immune system. So I'd say avoiding stress can be one of the biggest things you can do. Again, it's not going to be easy, but again, trying to find either the best things you can do, maybe you enjoy working from home, trying to also do other nice things for other people, such as supporting the others around you, whether it's your friends, your colleagues, or neighbors. All of these things are going to be really helping to relieve your own stress, especially if you're doing something for other people. So one of the things I would suggest is, again, as the simplest little token you can do, trying to do one particular thing nice for somebody else every single day. If you can manage to do that, I guarantee it's going to have a positive effect on your mood, which is going to have an effect on stress, and that could also start to have an effect on, say, the quality of your sleep. Trying to then pair that with some of the other things we talked about today, such as having a healthier diet. All of these things are really going to give you the best chances to make sure that you can prevent getting this. And if you do get this, which unfortunately most people are going to some extent, then you can at least fight it as best as possible. I've seen some predictions that predict that potentially 70% of the world could have contracted this at some point. Not everyone's guaranteed that they're going to get sick though. So do everything you can to try and either prevent this or to make sure that you can fight it and you have as strong immune system as possible. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments, either now or even back on a replay. I'll do my best to try and answer them at another video later in the future. Have a good evening and take care, everyone.